Are you looking for a podcast about a cold-blooded, calculating killer?
Well, then you're in the right place. Welcome to a YMBToAP Interlude.
Why, hello, Kelsey.
Why, hello, Robert. What are these big empty squares below us?
Yeah, what is this? There's more people here?
Mystery people?
Hi.
Wait, is this Jersey or are we on YMBToAP?
Where am I right now? I'm trapped in this black box of emotion.
We're trapped in
Welcome
the
to
movie that we're going to talk about.
YMBToAP.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh yeah, thanks guys. Thanks guys. Good to be here.
Two of our very best friends from Severed Podcast, the True Crime and Paranormal. What would you describe your show for us? Just give us a little tidbit. I know that regular listeners hear the tidbit every single week because we've had your ad in our show for like 6 months now, but
And it will stay there forever, but
I want to hear it from you.
Same.
All right.
Yeah,
Joe.
Harry, do you want to
Sure.
sum it up?
Sure. Yeah. So we're a podcast that focuses on true crime and paranormal cases. We try to keep the summary to a minimum, and we split the cases usually or sever them into 3 different aspects. And we always round it out with a little discussion of pop culture. Right now, our second season is going to start in January, and we are doing some bonus episodes called Severed Streaming, where we look at streaming series and films about true crime on Netflix, and Severed Strange Stories, where we look at, you guessed it, strange stories from the news, focused on true crime and paranormal stuff. And we've had some weird shit so far, real weird stuff. So if you're into
I love
that,
seeing
let
your
me know.
Instagram posts because it's always just like a butt or something. I'm
Yeah.
like, what's this episode really about?
Wait, we have a lot of butts on our Instagram. Wait, hold on a second. I haven't been on there in a minute. Drew does all that
we
stuff.
do.
A lot of
Just
butts.
goes
Oh,
losing
yeah.
control.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Oh,
butts
yeah.
on Instagram. So I also heard that you, Drew said you guys ceremonially start the episode with cracking open a can of something. I'm just wondering.
yes.
Just wondering. Oh, I also have a lime LaCroix, Kelsey. I got the same.
Twins!
Yeah, I didn't know if there was if I was clear to do that on.
Oh,
on mic.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's rip it open.
Yeah, it's
Inaugural
Right.
Severed can crack. Welcome to the show.
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh,
someone's
thank
was
you.
echoey. It sounded great.
Cheers.
I just
That's
realized
Mm.
I'm not
Cheers.
on cam, so I
Ooh.
could have just said that I was drinking a Four Loko and you would have believed me. But
Rod Gold for logo from 2012.
yeah, I dusted, dusting it off.
All right. So we have Severed on today because we're doing YMBToAP Interlude. And of course, we wanted to do something a little bit related to true crime, kind of crimey, spooky, because it's Halloween-ish time in our hearts and minds always. But you're hearing this on November 11th, ideally. So Severed has come on to talk with us about the delightful movie, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yeah, this is a gem.
Yeah, I kind of took a liberty there and was all like, maybe this movie that I've had on my list for about 4 years now.
A very long time.
Yeah, I found this on a list, as people who listen to the show know, on some YouTube thing of like 10 movies that go like try to break their audience or whatever.
Mhm.
And I will say, having seen this now, I don't know how it ranked as high as it did on the list.
Thank you. I was okay.
To like other movies that I have
Right.
watched from the list.
Right. All right. So now I want to know like what else is on the list that disturbs you more?
Yes.
What ranks higher for you?
I mean, so like Terrifier was on the list, and that was
Okay.
like a bit more gruesome. So I could see how that's like breaking the audience. You know, it was trying to like gore factor them or whatever.
Gallons and gallons of fake blood.
Really, the first one on it, man, I can't even remember the name of that movie. I have to look it up again. But it was number 10, and it was just about like a dad who he like lies to his family and says that, like they got a promotion and stuff.
That's the we did that on the podcast. We watched it. What was it, Drew? It was the one
Oh.
about the John List, right? John List inspired, was it?
It sounds like it. I need more details.
The stepfather?
That's what I thought.
No.
Stepfather?
Stepfather?
No.
maybe?
No. So this is one where it's like this dad was like supposed to get a promotion, but he didn't get the promotion. He actually got fired, but like the family was like counting on him, so they continue with what they're doing, and he goes in like horrible gambling and all this stuff, and it's all told in like found footage because the daughter got a camcorder for her birthday, and she's like uncovering that like maybe dad's actually not we're not as well off as we thought, and he's doing
Mm.
shady things to try to keep that up, and then he winds up just like murdering the family right there at the end. And it literally just left me feeling horrible for about a day. And to me, that was the first one, and it's still the top one.
Oh yeah, the found footage stuff is frightening.
Yeah,
I love
Yeah.
found footage movies. We
Yeah.
did a whole like quarter of our Zeitgeist thing, which is our Patreon, where we talked about found footage. So we covered like Blair Witch, but we also covered Cloverfield, and
Yeah.
what was the third one we did?
Poughkeepsie tapes.
right. Okay, well, so
Not
Poughkeepsie Tapes was on that list,
Yeah.
and that one to me still worse than
Yeah.
Henry.
Yeah.
That movie was intense.
Yeah.
Shit.
I won't see that one.
I do not recommend that for Kelsey
No.
at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. No.
Like I'm a horror fan, but I guess I'm more like classic slasher type horror, like psychological horror.
Yeah.
Horror that you would go and see and eat popcorn to.
Yeah.
This movie, to me, I'm gonna flat out say I didn't like it.
Okay.
And
Wow.
So that was going to be my next question was everybody can give a rating, but
Yeah.
the movie that I was talking about was called Exhibit A, so you guys are free to look that one over
A.
if you would like to.
I do remember you telling me about that one and being highly disturbed.
Yeah, that one fucked me up a little bit. Okay, so all right, Kelsey, I thought you were going to go about a 6. Like
No.
it was fine enough, but like
Honestly, a 3, and that's just because Michael Rooker like knocked it out of the park. But
okay.
there's no redeeming qualities about this. I didn't enjoy my time with it.
Okay. I will let you guys give a rating or your thoughts first.
Drew, go ahead. What do you think?
I think I'll give it a 6 out of a 10. I know that's crazy, but I what I liked about the film was that it gave you some insight into Henry, and I think it was Becky and it was Otis, and you got to see a little bit more of an intimate portrait of them kind of at home, and he wasn't as one-dimensional, and I appreciated that. And he was very awkward, and you got to see him sort of learn how to dance and socialize a little bit. I like the fact that he wasn't a one-dimensional psychopath or killer.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. But then, of course, the brutality of his crimes and the ending, which I'm sure at some point we'll talk about, which is, he spared nothing. He spared no one. He didn't really care. There were no attachments. And I really liked that they almost tried to humanize these characters, even though they were sort of deplorable in their own ways. And for that, I liked it a lot. I think I liked it. I think it was scary for 1985 or 1986. I think getting into the psychology or the zeitgeist of the time, I thought it was scary for that time. But for now, gruesome, yes. But I don't know if it's as terrifying or would break me now. You know what I mean? Looking at it through a 2024 lens, that's what I've got. That's what I've got for you.
Yeah. I mean, like, all right. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna be the unpopular one. I'm gonna give this one a 7 for me, and I'll tell you why. A couple things. So I remember seeing this movie like back in the day at Blockbuster, VHS copies of this and stuff like at the store, and I was always kind of like, I would rent a lot of like horror movies, slash movies, and this one was always kind of like, I don't know, that seems like a lot, And so I agree with Drew that the violence level of it, was not as shocking as I anticipated after like never having seen this, right? But what's interesting is that she mentions that it humanizes the character, which it does. Michael Rooker also great in this. But what's interesting is that it humanizes a character who is almost inhuman in the kind of banal way that he goes about committing acts of violence. I think that's really what stuck with me, is that like unlike other slasher films where you're like not necessarily rooting for the killer, but it's kind of cathartic and it's fun and it's sloppy and all this kind of stuff. This was just depravity, and it was honest. And I think in that way, like, chilling to the fact that there are people, who exist like this and people who have done things like this that have this stoicism about the way they go about committing murders. And I think that combined with Michael Rooker's like acting and stuff, I thought it was pretty good. It was outside the it distinguished itself in my mind in a crowded field of other kinds of slasher movies like this that I've seen, and I enjoyed it. It was a little, I don't want to say artsy, but it was on the verge of being a little raw, a little artsy, and I like that because I'm a snob.
Okay.
Okay, so you said you were going on the limb, and I feel like I'm the one going out on the limb because I'm like a 9. I loved it. I loved it so much. I thought it was a great movie.
All right.
Because of kind of what Harry was saying, like it wasn't like Hollywood. It wasn't like a glamour
Right.
of like watching someone kill stuff. It felt more like, and then like you said, Drew, like it's just an insight to a time and a place of this person doing this thing. That's what I liked about it, because you can watch, you can watch any Netflix thing of like a Jeffrey Dahmer, and we're gonna like Hollywood it, we're gonna glitz and glamour it, but this did not feel that way, and so I gleaned more of what I would want to have seen in that from the way that it was filmed.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting going into it. I think I was expecting something like big and splashy, because it's one of those movies that's kind of like hyped up. And I read all these posts on Reddit before I went in, because I was like, what's this movie about? And everybody on Reddit is like, I felt sick, I wanted to die. And I just didn't feel anything at all.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I kept hearing about these like crazy, like uncutting, like breaks of violence. So I thought like they were going to be like very traumatic, uncut, just like you're watching something unfold. And there's like one that I can think of, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. You know?
Like everyone really hyped up the home invasion scene, and in my mind, like the home invasion movie is The Strangers. So I was going in preparing for a level of like The Strangers or Last House on the Left, even something like really just bad, like that made me feel gross. But it was like 2 minutes, and it was basically just like you don't see a whole lot.
Knocks on her door, and it's like you're back here, just like watching him go like, "Oh, I'm gonna spray for bugs or something." Right? Was it that one?
No, I'm thinking about the one where it's like you're watching it through the camcorder, and they're rewatching the crime on TV.
Yeah, that one's pretty rough. Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Maybe mean, like fucking depraved. I don't know.
You definitely. I was gonna say you definitely have some sociopathic tendencies, but no. See, like
I thought that was me.
That could be both of you. I just we don't know each other that well, but so like The Strangers, I feel that. I also think about movies like, what's the other one called, like Funny Games, that I think there was an original. I
still need to see that one.
German
I haven't
version.
seen it, but
like, okay, so like Funny Games, I think was like a little more like art house and stuff like that. Strangers a little bit more horror, but I think like like a movie like The Strangers, it's it's theatrical. That's what got me about the home invasion scene in this movie, is that it was really. I mean, I can't say realistic because I've obviously never seen, a home invasion murder on tape before. But again, just the nihilistic cruelty of it was chilling. That bothered me a great deal, that scene, for sure. That was kind of one of the reasons I was debating on whether I should watch that scene or not. I'm like, I got kids. I'm getting soft in my old age now, and I'm just like, oh man, they kill the whole family, the kid, But I don't know. It left a little something with me after I watched it.
Yeah,
I wanted to actually mention how we're invited into Henry. I think it's the first 10 minutes of the film. There was a lot of gritty exposition. We see like the brutality, the depravity of his crimes, as we're talking about the hooker with a glass Coca-Cola bottle lodged in her mouth.
Ooh,
I thought
really
that was screwed up. And you know what? I thought it was maybe a nod, a wink, an homage to Clockwork Orange, just because of the way that it presented. That's what I got, which is I think Clockwork Orange. I can't do that one, but but nonetheless, I thought that was part of it. And oh god, and then I also thought him. So Henry and Otis go, air quotes, shopping in a back alley for a TV set.
Oh yeah,
and he smashes the TV set over the guy's head. It was just overkill. It just seemed like it was not enough. But I have to tell you, where I think things fell apart for me in the film was that it says as like a subtitle or subtext, Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer. I wanted to go more in depth, and I'll tell you why, because I wanted to know. He seemed to have apprehensiveness or anxieties about doing certain things. Like, for example, he can invade a home, he can terrorize women, he can sexually assault or rape women and kill them. But when it came to Becky, he didn't let Otis, incestuously at her. So there was a line that he was willing to cross. And I was wondering, what is the root of that? So if you're going to say it's a portrait of a serial killer, obviously you're giving us the visuals of it, but I wanted the psychological. I wanted the Kubrick. I wanted to go into the mind of him, right? Right?
Yeah. I feel that way too. It was almost like we were experiencing it through almost the lens of a fourth character, like Becky's friend or something, because you don't get to see insights into the characters. You're just kind of like there as a watcher of what's happening. So like, you're not the omnipresent, omniscient, like movie theater viewpoint. You're just like another person in the room, which maybe that's why people feel uncomfortable with this movie too, is because it kind of makes you an accomplice to whatever's going on,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels,
and you can't stop it.
Yeah. It did feel like a very real grounded movie. I think that's why I didn't like it as much, because I don't know. When I see a scary movie, I want like demons and ghosts and stuff, and this one.
Oh
just
yeah.
didn't
I
ring
mean,
those
like if you want to,
Yeah.
if you want to have fun, like for sure.
Yeah.
But like this is, like, I don't think this, this movie was not. But what's so weird about it is that like this movie, I think very deeply is not about having fun at all,
Right.
and yet it has this mystique around it, because when it was released, it was rated X, and you could only see it at like midnight movies, and it was hard to find for a long time, and all of that stuff really that kind of cult following makes it seem like it's going to be something novel and something kind of fun and kooky, and it's not. It's a depressing, depraved movie, and I just think it's like it's almost like false advertising to a degree with the legacy that it has, that it's like such an not fun movie to sit through for sure. Also, yeah, I mean, I agree with Drew too about the psychological stuff about Becky, because I mean, like we've seen other shows and films, like I'm thinking of like Dexter, like I don't know if you like that or have seen that show, but like he's got a code, right? He doesn't kill good people, he only kills other
Right.
bad people, and he seems to have some kind of a code or some kind of a pact with Becky, but he killed his mother, right? Because she abused and humiliated him when he was a kid, and then he's repulsed by Becky later on. So, like, there's like a lot of layers to what's going on with his relationship with her through the film, and I'd definitely be interested in seeing that. But again, that deep kind of exploration is not what we usually like in a fun, quote, lighthearted slasher flick, right?
Yeah.
Like,
True.
Well, it didn't say it was a psychological portrait either. I mean, to be fair, it was just billed as Henry, the portrait of a serial killer. And we got a very visual, like almost like we were talking about the movie poster before we went on, and you can see the whole mirror, right? Either his subconscious or his conscious mind and why he did that. But we didn't get any of that in the film. And I wanted to mention too, I thought the not artsy choice, but I guess just the stylistic choice of the film was to show, at least initially, the aftermath of several of the deaths, how Henry left the bodies. And you would almost not still frame them, but you would see them, like I mentioned, a couple of the women who were murdered. And then you would hear the sound, or non-diegetic sound. Let's not film school it, but you would hear the echoes of what transpired, his breathing, the murder, just to replay it. And again, it's almost like getting into your memory or your consciousness, and you can't get out of it because you're hearing the aftermath and you're seeing the aftermath, but you're not witnessing the murder. And I'm sure that was probably a very practical or pragmatic way to get around how much violence they could possibly include in the hour and a half film that it was, or whatever it was. But the only redeeming quality for me was that Harry had on the back of his car, which you get that information within the first 10 minutes. He had a bumper sticker on his beat up old car, and it said, "The moose is on the loose." And
What
that
is
for me,
that?
Did you see that? The
Okay,
moose,
yeah,
the moose is loose.
I'll tell you what it is. Okay, so two things. One, you misspoke. You said Harry and not Henry has that bumper sticker. Lucky for you, Harry also has that bumper sticker
Oh,
on
yeah.
his old car. And I believe, because I used to have a trucker hat that I was given, and I believe it was a phrase for this old beer company called Moosehead Beer that used to be around like the 80s. And I think the phrase was "the moose is loose." And I think
all right.
that could be what that's from.
Okay,
And
yeah, I
also,
saw
yeah,
that.
Freudian slip.
useless knowledge. Number 101 fact that I got. I also I watched an interview with the director and with Michael Rooker and the woman who played the wife in the home invasion scene. And speaking of that kind of like, Kubrick-esque kind of stuff, like what was interesting is like, you're saying the title is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and the director was talking about how like some of the scenes of the kills were actually meant to be these like portraits or tableau, like the way that prostitute was framed in the beginning, that shot, how it was kind of this like artistic, almost like still life, the woman with the socks on. I mean, there were just like different shots of the carnage that ended up being kind of, as aftermaths of killings are in these movies, just kind of still and quiet, right? And done in almost like an artistic way. So I thought that was, another version of like what portrait could mean in that sense.
Okay.
That's a good thought. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I did like, I mean, artistically, from like a film cinema standpoint, this is a really solid movie. Like the thing you were saying, Drew, about the audio design, it was really clever in the way that they did that, and it drew us in as the audience, I feel. And I mean, like it, as striking and horrific as the imagery is, like that woman with the Coke bottle in her mouth, it's really like framed very well. And knowing that this movie was so low budget and like so done with like bare bones stuff. I mean, I read that they had to borrow like the electrician on set his car to use as like the car that they're driving around. And the costume for Michael Rooker, he was like in janitor's clothes because he worked as a janitor at the time, and that was just his work uniform.
Yeah.
So
He
Yeah.
he apparently showed up to his audition in that. And he's in the interview. He was like, "Oh yeah, I got a call," and somebody's like, "Oh, this director's doing this quote TNA slasher thing. You want it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess so." He just shows up from work in his janitor uniform, and they're like, "This
guess
guy's
so.
perfect." And the director's thought, his mind was, he saw Michael Rooker and he just thought, "God, I hope this guy can act." Perfect.
Well, he has such an imposing presence too. I mean, he's
he
so
does.
intense
Yeah.
in so many of his roles and everything. Like I remember him from JFK because I just love that movie, and I remember he played one of the lawyers or something on Jim's team, and so I was like, wow, he's intense in almost every portrait. I also read a little bit online, and I saw people say, I guess as a counter narrative, that this film is not really an 80s slasher film, but I would tend to disagree with that. I think whenever you see that kind of iconic or infamous overlap of sex with violence, for me, I always equate it with the 80s film slasher genre. Like it's got that seediness to it. It's always sex overlapped with violence. I know H and I have talked about this before when we're talking about movies.
Yeah, I just think of Michael Rooker and Mallrats. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
What a jump! I'm talking
that's-
about the genre.
That's
Let's go
like
right to
literally. That's all I think about is Michael Rooker and Mallrats and shaking hands with. It's just gross. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to see it as a slasher for me because when I think slasher, I think like you're having fun watching the kills. And I wasn't having fun watching things.
I mean, even like the phrase slasher like is meant to make light of murder, right? Like just
Yeah,
a slasher
exactly.
movie. Yeah. So yeah, there's no fun to this movie at all. Thanks for asking us to watch it. It was a good time.
Yeah, no problem.
I have to say, I originally I thought I wasn't going to watch all of this. I said to Harry, I was like, you probably have more of a stomach than I do to watch this. I'll watch a little bit of it and I'll see how much I can get through. It actually captivated my attention. I actually stood around and watched the entire thing. I had to skip over some parts when Otis was gone, but he was whacked. But that seemed to get very gruesome. And then the end when he actually, spoiler, but he kills Becky and stuffs her in a suitcase. She was not going on the trip with him. And so nothing, you thought that there was maybe one sort of redeeming quality about him, if you can say that. And it wasn't. He just ended up killing her too. So nothing was sacred. Nothing was safe. And that's the last impression you have. And I know that ending elicited a strong feeling from a lot of people too, about maybe they thought things would end differently or there was a little bit of softness to him. And it turns out, no, that shows the brutality of him.
Yeah.
See, that's what I took from it, was that he was soft for her, but it's the fact that she grew to love him. That's what did it for him.
You
because
think so?
Well, like, so he was like always really, really good to her. And then there's the scene where like they're filming him and they're doing the dance thing and she gives him the kiss and he is completely repulsed by that. And then like that's when he immediately shuts down and he's like, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. So like I think he was cool enough with her. He probably would have taken her wherever she wanted to go, but then she was like, I love you. And then that was like, well, can't have that anymore.
Cooties, gross.
Gonna cut that out. So I thought that was it. Because it didn't tell you, so you have to wonder why did he kill her, and so that's what I like, that it didn't kind of go in as much, so that we can wonder and kind of think about it. You know,
I mean, I like to think that. I mean, I don't like to think this because it's terrible, but like I like to think that he doesn't kill her because he's repulsed by her and she comes on to him and he thinks she's going to be a clinger or whatever. I like to think that he killed her just completely indiscriminately without any feeling. Didn't even think twice about it. She was just the next victim. Like I think like that might be even truer to the character.
Yeah,
probably.
That's true. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, he's kind of a fucked up guy.
I love also how Drew Hudson's like, oh, I wasn't going to watch the whole thing. And then I was compelled by it. This is Drew Hudson, who like for our show sat through like 6 hours of Richard Kuklinski, the Mafia Iceman, hitman, contract killer, interview tapes from prison, like hours, like just living this for weeks on end. She's just like, but I watched the whole thing.
But the difference is, no, but the difference is that I'm not watching him recreate all his murders or like do them in real time. I'm listening to a reflection.
But
and
he was a real, but he really did that stuff. That's what's even more disturbing. I mean, this is just
well, this is based on Henry Lee. What the hell was his name?
Lucas.
Henry Lee Lucas and Otis O'Toole or something. They're murders.
I wanted to ask a real element.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know anything about those two murderers. So like, were they buddies? And was it pretty similar to the story?
I think so. I know a little bit about Henry Lee Lucas, and I pretty much, when I saw this movie like in Blockbuster, like, years ago, just thought that this was like basically a kind of a biopic of Henry Lee Lucas, and so I just imagined that's kind of what he did. Yeah, I don't know too much about him either. It could be an interesting case for us to do, but I feel like it's like the same, kind of serial killer template that we see often. He had like a bad childhood. His parents were abusive. See that a lot.
Well, I think Henry Lee Lucas, he's from Texas, I think, correct? I think
Virginia, and then and
Waco or
Died
something.
here.
Oh, from Waco, really?
Yeah, Waco.
Really?
I think he was born in Blacksburg, Virginia, but I think he lived or was there's a connection to Waco in Texas, which is actually
interesting.
Live research here. Henry Lee Lucas. Where did he?
Oh yeah, and Netflix has the Confession Killer. We haven't covered it yet, but it's disturbing. But they did have a kind of connection, like a friendship. And
well, it said actually there's on a basic Google, it says that they were potentially romantically involved.
Oh, interesting.
Wait, who? Otis and him?
Otis and Henry Lee Lucas, in that Otis was a part-time, not my words, but the words of the Wikipedia, part-time transvestite, and and struck up a friendship with him, and apparently there was a somewhat romantic relationship, which is even more. I mean, like, why didn't they show that in the movie? That's an interesting angle on this whole thing as well.
After like just looking at Henry Lee Lucas, he's the confession killer, and I know that guy. Like that's the dude who confessed to like 600 murders and
right,
end up doing all of them, but did a fair bit. But yeah, he did work in Texas. I say work. He did murder a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kind of is work.
Yeah, he did a little work in Texas.
Red-blooded American.
Wow.
What a resume. What a resume.
Yeah.
But I think that, the film did sort of, I wouldn't say hint. I think it was pretty overt at times that Otis's character, when he was dealing drugs or dealing pot to that college athlete, and he put his hand on his leg, and he was rebuffed as a result. But there, you can see that there were leanings. But Otis, I think, was pretty open sexually, and I think disturbingly so. He wanted Becky, and then he ended up raping her towards the end, and then that was the beginning of the end for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was disturbing, the whole incestuous thing that, strangely enough, Henry wanted to stop, but then nothing stopped him from killing either one of them, or violating, because I think at one point Henry and Otis picked up a few prostitutes and had sex with them, and then the theme is like he snapped their necks, and that was the thing. And so it was a cross between violating them in a depraved way and then just ending their lives and leaving them in the alley just like trash. So again, getting into the psyche of these characters, I mean, it's so horrifying to watch it. And I think also point of view was really important, because we were talking about how they had the camcorder, and they were recording their crimes at the same time, and then they were watching them back and studying them or examining them. And I thought it was interesting how the camera work was, where we started watching them watch their murders on the TV. And it was just this really frame within a frame. And it was very chilling, because we couldn't do anything to stop the murders, but now we're having to rewatch them alongside of Henry and Otis. And it added this other layer or dimension of being disturbed, I thought, for me anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when we listen to our own podcast and stuff. It's the same kind of depravity.
I will say this movie also leaned in a little too much for me on the it's like when you're a kid and you think quicksand's going to be like a much bigger deal. They just be snapping necks all the time.
Oh
my
yeah.
God.
Not that easy, I don't think. But like he would just be like, "Okay, we're done." And
Click.
I'm like, "No." But like everybody all the time, and I was like, "Okay, so this movie's not that great."
Well, do you remember the random scene where, so Otis is pretty, I guess, how am I going to put this, like, impressionable. First, he's disturbed by the murder of the two prostitutes. They get back home, they have a beer, and, Henry is saying, more or less, like, "You've never killed anyone." I don't think Otis had, but he, I think, was kind of trained, if you will, by Henry to do these acts. Because then in one scene, they went out and Henry gave him a gun, and he just shot this random person that they flagged down because they pretend to have car trouble. And then Otis starts laughing. So there's no there's no, I guess, redeeming quality, or maybe I'm foolish for like trying to look for one, because again, I think the film humanizes these characters in a way, and it's almost teasing you to believe that there's something good about them, even a little bit. And they're not, absolutely not. They're deplorable. So again, it kind of plays with your mind a little bit psychologically as you're trying to look at the portrait of Henry and, his quote unquote associates, but there's nothing redeeming about them.
Yeah.
Drew Hudson, the eternal optimist.
See, I didn't take anything good.
I wanted to like him. Mm-hmm.
I didn't take anything good about Otis almost at all. I mean, it kind of felt that way at first. So like you said, he hadn't killed somebody, but then he goes, well, you haven't killed someone. And he goes, well, not this way. So I feel like he might have killed somebody in self-defense before. And then he was like, it's just not the same. And then he kind of turned into a kid that's like, oh, I learned a new trick and I'm just trying to do it again.
Yeah, hey, Mom, this.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he
click.
Just kind of like, I don't even know that he just quite enjoyed it. He was like, oh, this guy that I respect does this. Look at me, like I can do it too, kind of thing. And I don't know that he really had any more thought behind it.
I mean, I could see him just like torturing animals as a kid, like this character, and just that kind of just for a lark, and it seems like a grown-up version of that with the people that he kills in the film too.
Yeah. I wanted to revisit the thing about like his mom too. So Henry's mom, we're led to believe that he kills her, but I kind of wonder if he did, because there's this whole thing about like he's like, yeah, I stabbed her, and then later on he says he shot her, and then Becky's like, I thought you said you stabbed her.
Right. And he kind of a baseball bat potentially.
Baseball bat,
it was. There was a lot of just like, did he kill her? Is he lying about it for like cred in prison? Like what's his actual crime that he was put away for? I want to know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like you wonder again, this backstory, like if this is like the fact that he didn't kill her and he was abusive, she was abusive to him. If this is like an inciting incident of like being emasculated, and this is why he takes all his aggression out on women in the film. And I mean, that could be his flaws. If he didn't kill his mom, maybe like killing all these other women and prostitutes, et cetera, is like making up, overkill for never killing his mom, who's the one that he really wanted to or should have killed. Or
interesting thought. Yeah.
Not that we have any mother issues in the severed family, but
yeah, you didn't ask us why we co-host a true crime podcast, guys, because you don't want to know. But no, I thought the same thing. I mean, it definitely builds up the lore of the character, because again, we don't get that kind of backstory. We don't really pierce into his mind as much, but we get the aftermath, the visceral traces of his murders and what he leaves behind in the wake. But I thought that was really really disturbing of him. And again, the fact that they would record and document and rewatch, they seem to have they were devoid of emotion. They were devoid of anything. And they were quite apathetic, I thought, as characters and stuff. But I also thought that they were very isolated, like all three of them. They banded together in this, dank apartment and everything. And none of them were disturbed by the fact that, Henry might have killed his mother. Becky was more drawn into him, I think, which speaks to her psychology that we don't get a lot of, right?
Yeah.
Like you're that fourth person, like Kelsey was saying, you're that first person saying, is anyone fucking disturbed by this? Because I am watching the movie. Like, get out of there. You don't want to associate with Henry, especially, whether or not you think he killed his mother or not. That would be enough. Just a suggestion would be enough.
Poor Becky is already so damaged. Like the first scene that we meet Becky, she's just like already just trauma dumping to this guy that just freshly got out of prison. She's like, so like my whole family was bad to me, and I've been a victim of abuse my whole life, and like here's my entire life story. It's just she's definitely a damaged person, and I think she's just drawn to other damaged people, just trying to make that connection.
Yeah. They probably matched on damage to Tinder or something. I don't know.
Tinder.
Stop. No, but what was also disturbing too is that, at the end, when you see that he doesn't spare her and that they're not going to go away together, she doesn't get back to her daughter, because you learn rather late in the story that she has a little girl.
Yeah,
right?
I forgot about that part.
Right.
Yeah, and it's disturbing because she's never going to get home to her daughter. And I was like, oh, that's even worse. There's no hope, because then that little girl's lost again. And how much, to your point, Kelsey, too, that we're talking about the sort of trauma cycle, how does that, begin again for that little girl based on this?
Yeah, that is all I could think of at the end. Because he was like, we're gonna send for your daughter when we get to this place. And so like I was just staring at the suitcase that's just on the side of the road, and it's like nobody knows. Nobody will probably ever know.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, she just will have disappeared.
Right. And there's never that kind of emotional import in like a regular slasher movie. We're never worried about the daughter and how she's going to grow up. And, you know, because like usually there's like a flash forward scene to the next year and the daughter whose whole family's been, like, she's fine. She's having her graduation party, whatever the fuck. And like, you know, like that's
What movie did you direct?
the one in my head. That's the work in progress. That's always going on.
Scary. Harry the Portrait of a Weirdo.
Don't you feel like when you see a movie like you know, maybe not like, I guess there's like always like there's a teaser for sequels at the end of movies like Scream or something, but you always see the character well adjusted the next year, everything's over, it's the aftermath, and they're like kind of back to normal. Like there's nobody's ever open-ended worrying about the, you know, the emotional trauma of the survivor. And yeah, this is why this movie I feel like has got a little bit more artsiness to it in that context. It's also interesting like how you're saying how they feel nothing. They rewatched this on videotape, the home invasion and everything. And I'm just wondering, like, there's something there. We know that Otis is, I mean, he's got some disgusting fetishes and he's, you know, driven by sex and all this kind of stuff. Henry, definitely not, but he's getting something. He's getting some gratification out of, you know, I guess the act of murder, watching the murder over and stuff like that, which is like some of the, I mean, ironically, some of the most depraved parts are the moments when he seems most human. We're like, oh, there is something stirring around in there. It seems like a lot of the time there's not, but there's, you know, something, whether it's, you know, gross or whatever, something in there that is, you know, hitting a peak when he watches that, the murders on the tape and stuff like that, which is interesting, you know, like how subtle Michael Rooker plays it too, you know?
I will say that's a part of his character. There was one part that actually kind of bothered me because Henry seems very, very smart. He, you know, he's like, this is a Latin word, bet you didn't know that. And he's talking about how like you got to change how you do it every time so that now they think there's 4 killers in the place. And this one part bothered me because they are recording all their stuff. And then like they break the camera outside of the car and Otis throws it out. I fully was like, tell him to go get that camera. Right. Like that's the one thing you didn't worry about. And he's so careful everywhere else. But I was like, you didn't worry about what could possibly be on some tape out there?
Right.
That's find on the ground. It's like,
but in the home invasion, he was the person recording it. So I don't think you see him do anything, do you? Or no, there's a point where like the kid comes into the room.
Well, he put the camera down on the ground or something.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that he was recording potentially to save face so that he couldn't be seen as being the one doing it. I didn't even think about that, really.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that there were, to your point, what Robert's saying is that the car scene just before the VHS camera recorder gets busted in pieces and he throws it out, which I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is how they get caught or somebody gets caught because maybe they can redeem the tape at some point. But also there's almost like a comedy routine between the two of them. Like there were humorous parts to it, you know, where they fight and they easily get over it. Yeah, exactly.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
Like,
it was.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it rubbed me a wrong way a little bit because it was just very like a couple of bumbling idiots do some kills. Like that was the whole movie.
Tomfoolery.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, I was thinking too, and maybe because I've been doing true crime too long here, like 9 months. But anyway, 9 months too long. But I think separate and apart from the more violent parts of the film and the period of time when there weren't so much kills, but you were watching how the 3 of them were interacting as roommates. There were parts where they were almost likable in some ways because they were so foolish or dumb and silly or lonely and isolated, and you wanted to know more about them. And so I thought that they were a little bit likable, but of course, when I just think the film unraveled more and more in such a depraved way that you couldn't, you know, forgive them. There was no way that they were redeeming, but I found them to be likable in some ways. And then, of course, the film reminds you, no, in this next scene, they're going to snap someone's neck. They're going to violate someone. And it almost jolts you back into reality again because of those more, I guess, human moments throughout the film.
It's like a 50s sitcom or something. It's like the kooky spree killers next door. Like,
you know,
exactly. Dick Van Dyke with murdering prostitutes.
Oh God. Oh man.
Bewitched with bodies, right? My God.
A
Sorry,
weird
sorry,
thing-
going straight to hell. Sorry.
a weird thing about this movie is that it does have a sequel. Did you guys look into that at all?
Oh,
I
no.
heard of. Is there only one, or are there multiple Henrys crawling
You
around out
know,
there?
I don't know. I kind of hope it's just
It
the
looks
one.
like just the one. Yeah.
Oh, thank
It's
God.
weird to me that they would make a sequel out of this because it's not like it was a successful film, right? Like, I don't think it made a profit.
Well, when was the sequel from? Was it like banking on the popularity of it as a cult movie, or did it come out like right afterwards? I don't
No,
know.
it was 10 years later.
10 years. Did they get Michael Rooker again for it?
No.
Oh.
No.
Why bother?
But it is the same character though.
What the hell?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, Henry too.
That's
Is that the
such-
one?
Yeah,
it must be.
it's just called Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer Part 2.
Okay.
Very
Clever
original,
title.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It came out in '96. Yeah. I don't. I mean, I would. It's actually it's also subtitled Mask of Sanity, which is I think again more overkill. But I wonder what the stature of this film was in 1996, like 10 years later. Like if it had
Yeah.
earned a reputation that now it was circulating on bootlegs, if they were like screening it places like even midnight movies again, if it had resurgence popularity. Like I mean, now we were talking about like there's an artist that we were talking about named Joe Coleman who did this original poster art that was just disgusting and they didn't want to release it with the movie. But now we were taking a look before and it was released on like a steelbook, Robert, you were saying, right? Like there's like a new
Yeah.
steelbook of the movie and they have that disgusting poster. So like now it's like a real film. Like there's a steelbook DVD of it and stuff like that, a re-release and everything. So I wonder how
Yeah.
what the status was in 96. I don't know.
I'm thinking probably not a lot, and this only really got brought up to my mind again because the Criterion Collection just released this movie.
There's a Criterion
as
of
like
this?
one of their one. Yeah.
Wowza.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's what made me go, oh yeah, I need to watch that movie.
I
And
mean,
then we were
like,
talking about this. I was like, well, hey, if Criterion says it's good,
hey, this
I guess I
got
should
this
watch
got 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert as well. They thought this was one of the best movies of the year when it was released. I swear to God, for
What?
real. They gave it 2 thumbs up. They thought it was one of the best films of the year in like whenever 85 or something, 85 when it was released.
I can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
it did make money, Kelsey. It did.
did?
So it was made for $110,000, and it made $600,000. So hey,
Okay.
That's
a little
pretty
bit
good.
of change. It's good.
That's pretty good. Enough to make Henry too, right? So
Yeah. So strange.
yeah, really weird.
Very weird.
And I also like wonder like what the equivalent of like rated X is now. Like I know we have like NC-17, but I mean like something that was actually
Yeah.
rated X in the 70s or 80s. Like is that really just our rating now in the world we live? Is it just
Yeah.
PG-13 now? Like could be.
Honestly, like
I guarantee you, if there was no nudity in this movie, it would be PG-13 now. Like if,
probably
like,
because I
yeah.
mean,
I'm
there's not
wondering.
a whole lot of particularly violent scenes. You don't see
Yeah.
somebody like bashed in someone's face. There's not like gallons
Well,
of fake blood
right.
and stuff.
I don't think we can do PG-13 because I think you only get one F-bomb, and
Oh,
there
yeah.
were several
right,
motherfuckers
There's also
thrown out
boobs.
in this. So,
Lots of boobs in this movie.
well, he was saying if there were no boobs,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the bad words would have done it for you.
Yeah,
But still, this feels like a light R of today.
light
I
art.
would-
A
Yeah.
light art. Yeah.
It's a light R,
Well, I think like another reason why I like it, and maybe Robert, why you like it too, is like it is dated to a degree in like the portrayals
Yeah.
of the violence stuff like that, but it's still so affecting. So how dated could it be if it still kind of holds up in a lot of ways in terms of how chilling it is? I mean, like that's really when you can like transcend the corniness of the effects or the limitations they had for stuff like that, and the movie still kind of sticks in your craw a bit
Yeah.
after that. I mean, I think that's really the mark of like a great movie.
So the stuff that we talked about, Kelsey, like cinematography stuff.
Yeah.
Like there were a couple, so like it's all practical for the most part as well.
Right.
So that's why it also can last and still look
Right.
pretty good.
Right.
Mhm.
But like there was a shot of one lady. I think it was the lady that like he saw at the mall. He followed her home and then he couldn't go in. And then he did later and like pretended to be the like bug spray guy.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's like a shot where like she's dead and like it pans around
Mm-hmm.
and she never blinks. And I'm just like, man, that's good acting to me. I would totally have like done something or looked away,
Just
know,
wink
but
at
like
the camera a little bit.
that shot was really, really good. And it made me go like that's actually a really cool shot. And I just was appreciating some of those things a lot in the movie. Like how, like we talked about the bottle thing. I was like,
Yeah.
those
How'd they do
prosthetics phenomenal.
Yeah.
They really were. Like, I
Yeah.
was disgusted by that scene.
Right.
Like I said, in terms of cinematography and just like as a piece of art, this is a great movie. I like to look at this movie.
Mhm.
It was just like the plot didn't do it for me. Like the
Yeah.
more we talk about it here, the more I can see the layers of like, okay, I did like it actually, but I wouldn't watch it again, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Which
know
is
if I'd
funny
recommend
'cause
it.
I watched it today and then was all like, anybody want to watch it later?
Oh my
I'll
god.
watch it again today.
Wow, watch it again in the same day. Yes. Wow.
But no, nobody wanted to watch it. So
Imagine that.
So have you guys thought of starting your own true crime podcast? Because I think you got the chops for it. Come on.
We'll
No?
just guest on yours sometime.
Yeah,
there
you
you
have
go.
to
There
come
you go.
on. You have to. Yeah, I thought it was really disturbing too how, particularly with the murder that you were talking about, Robert, where he strangles her with the cords.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were like phone cords or what, but and the whole pan around, it was scary because he first was tracking her from that store parking lot, and he was looking at a couple of women and seeing who he can nab, and he followed her home, and then she pulled into her driveway, and you can see her husband come out, and it's like, oh, okay, she dodged a bullet. Like you're like you're relieved, right? But then he
Yeah.
goes back with this sort of
Yeah.
disguise, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's over for her. So just when you thought it was safe, it's not. And so again, there's nothing sacred to him, of course, nothing that he won't go back and do. And there's a relentlessness to him for sure. There's a relentless protectiveness
Yeah.
towards Becky, but then also depravity towards women. And you see that play out time and again. And but again, after everything he's shown us from the very beginning to the end, it's that again, no one is really safe, including Becky. I maybe thought that they were actually going to run away, and because she was kind of in on it, she knew what happened with Otis, and
Right.
maybe she wasn't going to say anything because that threat to her was
Yeah.
now completely gone. But not true. Nothing is sacred to him, and he really is a cold-blooded killer. That's what you take away. And I've read people online say that ending lived rent-free in their head for a long time, and I can understand why.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up because I totally was getting the sense that he was like a dog chasing a car kind of thing. Like he would just see someone
Mhm.
that sparked his interest and then he would go.
Yeah.
And it either would stay or not. But then you're right, because he went back for that one. But then there's the
Mhm.
lady in the alleyway with the dog, and he was fully
Yeah.
committed. I'm going to take this lady. And then he goes, nah. And then just
Like
kind
a
of left,
donkey.
you know?
The dog
And it's like,
farmed him, Dolores.
so, you know, what
Yeah.
really is his spark or drive to then go, nah, you're fine.
I thought about
Versus that
him-
lady going back, you know?
I thought he was more
Exactly.
like a predator animal, like, you know, stalking his prey and getting a feel for
Mhm.
stuff. Like it
Mhm.
reminded me of just watching like a coyote hunt, you know. They go out and they find the weak prey and the ones that make sense, and they don't waste their
Yeah.
energy on the ones that they would have to work for.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, to double down on what we were saying before about just like the banality of evil in the movie. I mean, I think the most frightening thing for me watching this, the thing that was really sticking with me is just really if there was just no MO, if this was just indiscriminate killing. Like that's the most
Mhm.
frightening thing.
Yeah.
That there really
Yeah.
was no sense to be made of it, no profile to be made of him, no method to his madness, so to speak. And I think that is the scariest thing for me, that people
Yeah.
might exist who do these things without any intention or reason, and they just do it. You know.
Well, he was.
'cause-
I think there were random. I don't think he was as random. I think he was trying to make it seem that his murders were random to throw off the police, like Robert was saying earlier. But I do think he was an opportunistic killer at times. But then other times he was predatory and he tracked and he went back. So you could see that range within him. And I think he was intentional. He was stalking. There were stalker elements about it. And he just looked to violate. It didn't matter if he was sexually violating a prostitute or whatever the case was. He was going to get you if he wanted to get you. So he was targeting, he was exploitative, and then he also was opportunistic at times. And that's what I think is so scary about him. Again, the rest I think was to throw off the cops because he was teaching Otis in real time
Yeah.
how to be a killer, essentially,
Yeah.
or an accomplice. But at the end of the day, I think he was intentional. And again, for me, going back to that other home invasion crime, she let him in under that assumption that he was the exterminator, whatever, the bug spray guy. and it turned out really badly, obviously. So no one was safe. I always got the feeling that nothing was safe. Even for a period of time, I thought Becky was, because he was her protector in some ways, but then not at the end. That was kind of like the little bit of surprise or twist.
I was actually going to ask you guys a question of what you thought, but since we looked up the real thing, I'm finding out that's still kind of true. Because I was going to ask this about the movie. I feel like in like a lot of ways, you get these killers that like always evade the cops. They never get caught. But the thing that seems to always be their downfall is that pride of getting that recognition. You know, they kind of want that credit, and then they usually get found. And then he was just trying to stay out of the limelight so fully. And I was like, maybe that's why he's so good. But then we looked up the real guy, and he's the confession killer who's like, look at all the things I did. And I'm like, oh, no, he still did it. He still was prideful about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe that was an intentional choice too, because sorry, H. Do you want to go?
No. I'm gonna hold back. You go.
I just want to say quickly that maybe that the reason why was because for the film, or it being an hour and 30 minutes that let's say they had to gap it, they didn't go too deeply into that. They wanted to show a contrast and make him, again, evasive, more much more of an isolated figure for us. We can't pierce his mind, and so maybe that's part of the mystique around him that we've been talking about, because it wasn't exactly a film that really delved into who he really was. It was more just a representation of who he was, or again, to scare audiences, him being so isolated or not even detached from himself, and so depraved and animalistic and primitive in his kills that I think the film was really looking to artfully, I guess, represent the kills more than the psychology. And so that's separate from the real Henry. But yeah, that's what I've got. H, jump in.
I was just gonna say also, like, I mean, he confessed to these things like after he was caught, I believe. So this takes place, before that, and I mean, I feel like we see a lot of in the profile of killers and tropes of this kind of stuff. These like delusions of grandeur and narcissism and stuff like that, and there are a lot of cases where they toy with the cops and the public, and they want to be caught. And so, yeah, I mean, the time constraints for sure, and I think again, just that this is the the period of activity, or as Kelsey would say, work for him, before he gets caught. And I mean, who knows, and I have not seen Henry 2. I don't know if that whole movie is just literally a long interview on stage with a moderator, or if he's actually killing people there. But
it's a TED Talk. It's a TED Talk. That's really what it is. It's a very insightful TED Talk. It's a TED Talk. No, but I think that's well, when Kelsey's not wrong about work. I mean, look, he couldn't get much work as an exterminator. What else do you do, right? You've got to pay rent. You've got to do something. So, and that's the thing.
You got to do something, Drew, I think.
Well, I mean, got to keep your hands busy. It's important.
That's the takeaway.
Idle hands,
exactly. I wondered if he robbed from the people who he murdered as well.
I was wondering that too now.
Right. Like, I didn't see any tangible thing because, well, he had extra money because when he went shopping in the alley for the TV and the guy was trying to upcharge him. Yeah. He was like, well, he's got $100 on him at least. I'm like, where are you getting that if you're hardly working? And then they were eating fast food. So he had money for that. Conveniently, after he killed someone, he's like, you want some fries? And then there you go. But it was really strange. So you had the feeling that he did rob. Oh, and he also had the Visa card on him because he took Becky out for the steak dinner. Yeah. I'm gonna try out this new Visa. Okay, where'd you get it from?
Everybody commercial for Visa, or like Diners Club from the 80s. Yeah. Or
something. They were a sponsor, right?
Yeah. God. Yeah. Overall, like, I'm glad I watched the movie and could talk about it with y'all, because I'm rating this conversation a 10 out of 10, but still my rating for the movie, I might raise it to like a 4.5, because I feel like 3 is maybe unkind, but I'd say 4.5.
I mean, what is the point of this kind of conversation? I mean, what's the point of the conversation if we can't bump your rating up a point or two, right?
True.
We're actually working on a script for Henry 3, so we're trying to talk this up and get some promotion. There we go.
All right, good stuff.
I think we could pull it up. Yeah, we could pull it off. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Wikipedia plot for part 2 is literally like 3 paragraphs, so I imagine we could do a good job.
We need to do like a multiverse version or something.
Yeah, he does Henry, comedy.
He does comedy or does TED Talks for real, and then
No. He's teaching a master class. Right. He's like, this is how you do it. There you go.
That's how he makes his money.
Yeah.
God. All right, good conversation. You guys have any final thoughts on our way out on Henry? Harry? Henry. I keep getting confused because we have a Harry on our show here.
Right. Yeah. Right. Harry,
Same
portrait
person.
of a podcaster. I can't remember if I made that joke earlier or not. I might
Now
have.
you get to see what I deal with. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
I guess this was intriguing. Go ahead, H.
No, see, we talk over each other all the time. We got to stop doing this, Drew. This doesn't
Charm
seem like
of
we have our
being a
shit together for our
podcaster.
podcast. Drew, please go ahead.
Listen.
I insist.
No, I just want to say this was an interesting watch. Perfect time to kind of have us on. We appreciate it. We love being on here. We love YMToAP. We love you guys. And we're finally glad to have collaborated with you, even if it was on this film. That's really pushed the boundaries of our comfort level. And yeah, we're grateful for the work. Let's put it that way.
We're grateful for the work. Yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. This was a blast. We definitely want to have you on our show as well. We'll try to find something equally as tasteful to present you with when we
Excellent, perfect.
when we talk.
Henry too.
We'll do Henry too. Yeah.
Robert, final thoughts?
I just want to say, I guess thank you guys for watching it with me. I do watch weird. Kelsey knows. She tries to not watch a lot of the things that I watch. So it was interesting to get 3 people to watch a weird movie with me. So I appreciate that very much.
Anytime.
And, that's why I kind of wanted to bring you guys in because this is, the kind of stuff that you guys talk about all the time. So you'd have insights because for me, it's all just like movie, and you guys have a whole other side to it. So I was glad to get to talk to you guys and love the conversation. So thank you again.
This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Our pleasure. Anytime. And come on ours. We'll try to cook up a good streaming for you and also Strange Story, something we can chop up and have some fun.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Well, let's button up this YMToAP interlude. I hope the audience enjoyed this conversation as much as the host did.
Yeah, it was a good time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and maybe you'll hear from Drew and Harry in the future, or you'll just see us over there. We love these guys, so
go subscribe to them regardless. They have an amazing podcast, and they work very hard on it. It deserves 1 billion listens.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so with that, I guess we'll catch you guys another time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
See you.